Now, one of the recently released men, Keith Siegel, is back recovering with his family after 15 months in Hamas captivity. And while we are still learning about the horrors that he endured, we're also learning more about his strength and the spirit that helped him come back alive. We're joined now by Keith's brother, Lee Siegel. Lee, thank you so much for being with us on The Rundown this evening. It has been 2 weeks since your brother Keith's return. As far as these past 2 weeks, let's just take a minute for his recovery and for your family's recovery as well. How are you all doing?
We are getting used to a new reality. We were 484 days, family working 24/7 to get Keith home after Aviva, his wife, my sister-in-law, was released 51 days during the 1-week ceasefire diplomatic negotiations. So we're trying to take our breath, but that isn't really possible because there are still 76 hostages in Gaza. You've been reporting phase 1, phase 2. We believe that everyone needs to come back now. And the questions of whether to negotiate, what we should be negotiating, it's not a question. Israel's government signed on the agreement. The agreement calls for all hostages to be returned. We know that by definition that means stopping the war. That's what has to happen.
And Lee, you have been, as well as Aviva, as you mentioned, so vocal in this fight for all of the hostages. You've been here joining us on I-24 News as well, speaking about not only the plight of your brother, but for all of the hostages. And that's exactly what you're doing right now, even though your family is reunited. This is the message we continue to hear from the families of the hostages, that until all of them are home, the fight doesn't stop. But are you confident that the ceasefire will remain intact and we will see all of them come home? Because even just this week, it is standing on very thin ice.
We, as we did for 484 days, can't allow ourselves to listen to all the noise that's out there. We're not diplomats. We're not military people. We believe in human life. We believe in Jewish values. We believe that our government, once the decision was made to ratify the agreement, will uphold the agreement. And as I said, that agreement calls for all of the hostages being returned. It's a tortuous agony to go week by week for 3 hostages or 4 hostages on a list on a Friday. Will they indeed be delivered to the Red Cross? Will they indeed make their way to Israel? That isn't what the country needs now. The country needs for all the hostages to be home.
And meanwhile, it becomes even more difficult as we learn more about what some of these hostages have endured over these 480 plus days. We are learning more about what Keith went through. Are there any details that you feel comfortable sharing with us?
I think that everyone in Israel who has been following almost 500 days of war is aware of the fact that hostages who have no independence, no opportunity to make decisions for themselves, and are held underground in houses by, these are not just guards, these are terrorists who hold weapons. It upsets me when we see hostages released and people comment on how weak they look, how much weight they've lost. What do people expect? Very little food, very little water, very little physical activity. That is the plight of our hostages. Why is there not more urgency to bring them home? That's the only question I think is relevant today.
I think it's a very relevant question, so that more and more of these families can have the reunion that you and your family had. Lee, quickly just bring us back to that moment when you did see Keith for the first time and you were able to actually see, speak, and hug your brother.
That hug was when I finally allowed myself to believe that Keith is back. Up until then, seeing him in Gaza, Hamas ceremony on a stage, into the Red Cross vehicles, delivered to Israel, I just, for my own protection, couldn't truly believe and let my guard down until I could hug him and say, I love you, you're home, and hear him say that and see him hugging his children, Shai, their eldest, who was Angkvar Az on October 7th, a joy that I hadn't experienced after Aviva was released. It took a long time to experience such a joy and to see Keith strong in mind. Of course, he needs to work on his physical rehab, but his mind is sharp. He held himself very strong. He spoke with us, of course, in his mind every day. He spoke with us. We couldn't imagine what he was going through. He told us he's sorry that we needed to worry about him. He's that kind of person, very sensitive, very engaging with whoever he is with. He was with many hostages. They found a way to survive. He is strong. He's the Keith that we know, and he will work on what's necessary to reconnect with an Israel that he was away from for almost 16 months.
His strength and spirit is truly inspiring to all of us, not only here in Israel, but everyone watching as well. Seeing those emotional reunions gives everyone else watching his strength some strength as well. Lee Siegel, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your reunion and moments that you've been sharing with Keith as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.